What can the number of hours that you spent preparing for your career tell you about the readiness you have to be a better boss in business? That's what we're going to talk about today on Boss Beat. The resolve it takes to practice and prepare for better people leadership. This is Boss Beat, where we have a latte of leadership for those seeking to be and build better bosses in business. I'm Ben, and yes, I do like my bees. Okay, so I want you to think about the last time you went through formal education. Now, maybe you didn't. I shouldn't say, maybe you went through trades. Whatever the case may be. If you went through college, think about the number of hours you spent studying. If you did a trade school, think about the number of hours you spent practicing your trade. If you self-taught, how many hours did you spend reading and researching on the topic that you choose to practice today? It may have been a while, but think about that time. And based on the amount of time you spent studying and preparing for your career, where do you think that puts you versus your peers in the field? If you spent a lot of time studying for your field, would you say you have more than average? If you didn't spend that much time, would you say you have less than average amount of time versus your peers in your field? Let's take a look at some examples by degree type or equivalent. First, if you got yourself an associate's degree or went to a trade school, on average, you probably invested about 2,100 hours. I would say that's below average for most knowledge workers today. Again, you may not have gone to formal schooling, you may have taught yourself, but if you've invested about 2,100 hours for the typical knowledge worker position today, I'd say that's probably below average. You may feel differently, but where do you think that puts you given your field or career? Now, if you studied and got a bachelor's degree, that's 4 years of study roughly equivalent to 4,300 hours. Probably around the average or typical range for most knowledge worker positions today. If you went for your master's, that's about 8,500 hours total invested, probably above average. And then if you got your doctorate or equivalent, you've invested about 8,600 hours. That's why they call it a terminal degree, right? You've gone the furthest that formal education will take you. Now, beyond that, we have what's this expert area, popularized by Malcolm Gladwell. He researched and shared the studies from Herbert Simon and William Chess, who talked about, after studying countless fields and industries, everything from extreme success stories in sports and athletics, to knowledge workers, the top of their field, to doctors and scientists who are top of their field, musicians and artists who created masterpieces. All their research suggested that there was no shortcut, that the vast majority of the greatest achievers didn't achieve their greatest works until they had invested about 10,000 hours of study or accurate and correct practice in their field. That's where we get that expert 10,000 hours from. So, how many hours of study in people leadership does the average boss get? How many hours in people leadership have you invested? Well, if you're fortunate enough to get through the equivalent of one full 3-credit course in college, then you got a whopping 120 hours in practicing and studying for people leadership, which is a totally different skill set for most of us than what we studied for our career. And yet we wonder why there's so many bad bosses in business. The reality is most of us probably didn't even get a full 3-credit course. Most people, when they are promoted into a position of people leadership, a management position in an organization, are lucky if they get 2 or 3 days of training on what it means to be a boss or a people leader in business. Just look at those hour differences, right? The reality is, gang, today's episode of Boss Beat is about resolve. There's a big gap there between even the lowest level or the least amount of formal education for today's average knowledge worker. An associate's degree, about 2,000 hours, right? And yet, most bosses in business are lucky if they've gotten 120 hours in training and preparation for that completely different skill set than what they studied for in college for their career. Why do we have so many bad bosses? Because we lack the resolve. Both individually, we have to own our piece of it, right? We have to own our piece that says we will study to be better bosses. We have to take that piece and say, okay, I recognize that I haven't studied how to be a good boss. And now it's half of my job responsibilities, if not more. We have to own that. And we have to have the resolve to go read some books, take a course, sign up for some training sessions, right? Do you have to go back to college full time? Heck no. But you do need to have the resolve to follow through and take it seriously. If you want to be a better boss, you want to have those better boss behaviors, you want to have a team that loves you and supports you, that is an engaged team that's delivering great results, you're not going to get there with 120 hours or less of training on the subject. And if you're in HR and you're watching this, and one of your responsibilities is for developing and building better bosses for the business, you can't get off with a 1 or 2 day course for new bosses. You need to own it, gang. We need to have that resolve to get serious about investing in the leadership of our people. Now, every day on Boss Beat, we like to come up with a quote that's relevant. Today's a little different. I have a quote. I pulled this one from Calvin Coolidge specifically because he actually says in it, hey, it's not just about education. But I want you to watch closely to listen closely to the quote, right? Calvin Coolidge said, nothing in this world can take the place of persistence. Talent will not. Nothing is more common than unsuccessful men with talent. Genius will not. Unrewarded genius is almost a proverb. Education will not. The world is full of educated derelicts. Persistence and determination alone are omnipotent. The slogan, "Press on," has solved and always will solve the problems of the human race. I agree with Mr. Coolidge. But education is a component, gang. Education is a cornerstone component. Education combined with the persistence that Coolidge spoke about is what we need to be great leaders. More importantly, if we lack that education, we're going to have to be more persistent longer before we achieve those results. Do you have the resolve that it takes to practice and study great people leadership? Or are you trying to skim by with less than 120 hours versus what you studied for your career? All right, questions to ask yourself from moving forward. How are you studying to be a better people leader? And second, how are you helping your organization invest in better boss behaviors? Now, I know I reference it often here on Boss Beat, but I do want to point out to that second point because I know money's tight, right? Every organization can't afford great leadership programs. However, you should. Why? It has been proven time and again, study after study, that investing in people leadership is one of the best return on investments any organization can make. To prove that, and if you need support for that, check out modernservantleader.com. There you will find under resources. I'm on resources. You can't quite see on the screen. The very top there at the menu is resources, and then click ROI calculators. And here you will see several different calculators you can use to do a quick back of the napkin calculation on how much your company can expect in return, or what a typical return on investment is for any leadership program you're considering. All free, not even email gated, gang. Just go out there. You can use them to calculate what the ROI will look like for your business. If you enjoy this content, please remember that every day on Boss Beat, every weekday, we cover one of the 7 core principles. They are populating on your screen: selflessness, empathy, resolve, virtuousness, authenticity, nonpartisanship, and thoroughness. Those all come from the acronym model of servant leadership. Why do we use that? Because at the end of the day, there are dozens, if not hundreds, of fantastic books on leadership out there, but they're almost all, written from one person's perspective. One person's thought from their experience on what makes great leadership. The acronym model of servant leadership is based on over 2 decades of studying all those books, plus many more, and dozens of great leadership experts and examples from history and modern day, so that you know what you get here is actionable and practical advice that is tried and true. I hope today wasn't too harsh on you, gang. I know it's not easy to think about it, but gang, we've got to study. We've got to have the resolve to learn and understand and practice what it means to be good people leaders. If you're working on less than 120 hours of total investment in people leadership, you can't be surprised when your people are frustrated, disengaged, or you're not achieving great results. If, on the other hand, you're serious about it, let me know if there's some way I can help. Otherwise, get yourself into a program, find your organization some leadership development programs, pick up some books. And until next time, keep serving.